Hello, today I'm going to teach you how to draw expressions so you understand the ins and outs of that. This picture that I drew is brilliant and it expresses it completely. Most tutorials you'll see when they tell you how to draw people, they'll just be like, this is how you draw a mad face, this is how you draw a sad face, and this is how you draw like a confused face. And then that's as far as they'll go. They'll tell you like, this is how you draw this, but they won't actually explain to you why it works the way it works. They just kind of show you it and then run away. It's like they give you random facts and then they leave and they don't come back to tell you why the facts are that case, and usually it's like something like strange and off. So today I'm going to teach you how to draw those expressions and understand why they're expressive in that way. So first of all, I'm going to draw a quick face, and we're going to start with what are the most important elements of the face. Now, the nose usually isn't that expressive. The biggest expression is going to be your eyes, your eyebrows, and your mouth. Now, I say the eyes, the eyebrows, and the mouth because the eyes are included. The nose doesn't really contribute hugely to the expression. The most that you'll ever see the nose do is like if you add little wrinkle lines right there, you can make the character look a little bit more disgusted. So that's that. So first of all, the first most important thing, here I'll mark it out with red. The first, with the mouth, is the sides of the mouth. What are the sides of the mouth doing? Determines what the entire mouth is doing. With the eyes, the exposure. What are the exposure of the eyes? That tells you how intense the expression is. And then with the eyebrows, this part is the most important part. The edges tells you what the entire expression is. So first of all, we're going to start with the eyes to kind of show you that that is the case. I'm going to draw two eyes like this. I'm going to show you that the eyebrows can change completely what your expression is going to be. So let's say I've got this guy's eyes right here. It's kind of hard to see because it's really big. Let me just get rid of that. Alright, so I got two pairs of eyes right here, right? So the first set of eyes, he's got his eyelids, or his eyeballs. Why am I on white, please? So I got his eyeballs here, and this already has a lot of expression to it. Now, the reason that this has expression to it is because there are no eyebrows, the eyelids are substituting for the eyebrows. And when you have a character's eye like this, you can have his eyebrow up here, and then as he's being expressive, his eyebrow can move down to actually covering over the top eyelid and be working as an eyebrow by itself. So that's why when you see characters that have no eyebrows, they can still be expressive, even though it's kind of like a complex function. Sonic is very much that way. If you draw Sonic, his eyes, his eyelids are the same as his eyebrows. This looks terrible. Let me try again. So Sonic is a really kind of harder character to draw because if you take into factor the exposure of the eyes, the eye has to move quite a bit upwards, so you have to be very in control of that. The expression, the way it expresses on the character is where this part touches your actual eye, so you have to be very careful of that. And then his eyelids are part of what shows his eyebrows as an expression. So continuing what I said here, if you have mad eyebrows, it makes a character mad. If you have sad eyebrows, it makes a character sad. The eyebrows can completely control the character's expression, but it's not just the overall length of the eyebrow like that. It's the very center. So if I take the very center of this and turn it down afterwards, like this, I can get more of a, well, I guess the bigger majority of it's still pretty much controlling it. But on this one, if I turn the edges up a little bit, I can almost completely change the expression to have a little bit more of an expression to it. So let's say I have a couple of eyes here and a couple of eyes here. I want this guy to look concerned, so I draw him mostly angry, but then I tip the edges up to show that he's a little bit unstable with his anger. So it's more of a concerned look. Then it doesn't matter how you draw the eyes. You got the eyes on there. But I want this guy to seem just angry. So I bring the thing down, and I keep it pretty straight for the most part. He's just angry. So you're able to control a little bit of the expression that way by changing just the inner bits of it. That really affects the expression as a whole. After that, I was talking about the exposure of the eye. Depending on what the exposure of the eye is how intense the expression is overall. So if I have a mad face here, and I have another mad face here, this one is going to look less mad than this one, because this one's whole eye is exposed. This guy's eye is cut off right there, so the expression is more relaxed. Now this applies to every expression. So if I draw another set of eyes here, another set of eyes here, draw a sad guy, two sad guys. This guy's pretty sad, but this guy's really sad. He's more focused. He's more focused about how sad he is. It's harder to tell unless it's absolutely in the center. So you can see that the exposure of the eye is completely dependent on how much you show. So if I have a character like this, oh, I got an email. If I have a character like this and his eye is only barely exposed, his focus on the situation is going to be very off. So he's going to be looking off in a different direction. Whereas if I draw his eyes more down into the center, he's a lot more focused at what's going on. So just redraw the eyebrows, give him more of an expression. This kind of goes to the shape of the eyebrow. In this case right here, this expression still doesn't look quite as expressive as like that one. That is completely due to the eyelids. The eyelids being flat like that gives the illusion that half the eyelid is being covered, the same as the expression would apply to that. So that's the only reason that this expression doesn't look more intense or more focused than it does right now, because the eyelids going like halfway down causes it to be a little bit less expressive. Now on the mouth, like I was saying, the edges are really the kicker for your mouth. If you draw a mouth, oh, I've got to the edge of my page. If you draw a mouth on a guy and the guy's like doing this or whatever, then when you draw his mouth like kind of frowning, but you tip the edges up, you can give the illusion that the whole character is then smiling, to show that basically the edges are the most important part of the mouth. So it's really easier to tell on a straight-faced person. If I drew just a straight line like that, and you had the character with his eyes, then if I tipped the edges up, it would give him more of a happy look upon life, I guess. But if I tipped them down, he'd be just a little bit more upset. So when someone draws a character, they just quick draw a character with like big eyes, they draw a straight mouth, and then they just do that. The edges are something they're really focusing on, if they know what they're doing, to control the whole look of the entire character. So if I were to change the edges just slightly so that they were kind of tipped up instead, just barely, very subtle detail, he's then smiling. If I take the edges and tip them down, he's then frowning. The edges are what tells you everything about your character. So if I take a character and I turn him at like a downward angle-ish, and you got his nose kind of protruding from his face, and his mouth that rounds off to the side of his head, kind of like in that shape, before you've got his eyebrows, whatever, then I can determine the rest of his expression by then changing the edge of it. So I can make him happy by changing the edge up slightly. I mean, most of his expression is still pretty straight because the whole mouth isn't being morphed. But if I change his mouth kind of more down, then it kind of changes his expression to be like more sad about things, more tired, less happy about it, I guess, so to speak. So the shape of your mouth, you can still do a dynamic shape for a mouth and have the rest of it still expressive by just changing the very edge. So that tells you about eye exposure, tells you about eyebrow control, tells you about mouth control, and like I said, the nose really only makes the character look a tad bit more disgusted. With the face as a whole, you have to remember that all of these elements are really squishy, pretty much. They can stretch a whole lot. So if I'm drawing a mouth like that, then the whole mouth can stretch, and you got the teeth under there, whatever. But you understand how to make the very edges more expressive than the rest of it because you understand the dynamics of a character. So, if I were to draw Sonic real quick, and I got his eyes kind of shaped like this, well, I'll try to do Sonic just a tiny bit better. How come my thing isn't... What the hell? Where'd it gone? Alright, so let me try again. I'm gonna go down with that. Circle's bad. So, I got Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic the Hedgehog. His eyes kind of do like this. This actually looks terrible. Let me try to draw Sonic in the way that it actually looks like Sonic again. And I'll kind of explain how the eyebrows can affect the character largely once you've drawn the character itself. So here's Sonic. And there's his mouth on one side like it usually is. And so I've got his eyes right here. And since his eyes are, his eyebrow and his eyelid the same, well actually you'll probably see some comics and in some video games they'll draw his eyelid right there to kind of give him that expression that normally he doesn't have. But before that, that's why Sonic most of the time is really like cheerful, is because his whole eye has to be like in the center of his eye. Like the top part isn't exposed, so it always gives the impression like he's always focused, he's always intense, he's always like really bright about the situations he's in. So since his eyebrow is such a strange shape like that, depending on where I put the eye, is going to change the whole expression. So let me just fix this up so it doesn't look so horrible. So horrible. So if I want him to look sideways, then if I put one eye here and I put the other eye here, he's then doing more like this expression, where he's like lifting one eyebrow. Because the shape of his eyes change and he doesn't have something in the center to determine the difference, his whole eye gets affected by what his eyebrows are doing. So if I want him to be more angry on both sides, I would have to apply that kind of shape to this side as well somehow to give you the impression that he's still angry when looking in that direction. It's kind of an odd case. That's why most of the time when you see people draw Sonic, he's looking forward or he's almost cross-eyed. It's because his eyebrow is the whole thing controlling his eye. If they were to try to make him look angry, then and looking to the side, then they'd have to do something like this, or kind of it just becomes complicated to do because if you add the eyelids on there, it just makes his expression less intense. So it just makes it complicated. So if I have his eyes on the end like this, he just looks like really derpy. I was expecting him to look sad, but he just mostly looks like freaking really derpy. So there's that. So something directly related to this has to do with the person's eye point. So you don't want to make the person wall-eyed. So you have to kind of understand how someone's vision works. When you have a person's eyes like this, let me just draw the... Hey, move, please. So when you have a person's eyes like this, sometimes when you put them both in the center like that, the character ends up looking wall-eyed, and it's just like, what the heck? Freaking derp, you know? So the reason that happens when you're drawing a character is, like, if you were close enough to the character that you actually started to see a perspective change in the character largely as his face came forward, then if both of his eyes were looking absolutely forward, you'd be so centered that it would kind of look like he was wall-eyed. But this happens so rarely that this is not something you need to factor in when you're actually drawing a character. So if I'm drawing a head, like here's my character's head, both of his eyes are right here. If you had the camera right there and both of his eyes were going forward, then to you it would look like the eyes were kind of going at an outward angle like that. So that's what I'm saying. Normally your camera's never that close, so you don't have to worry about it. But let's say there's an object right here. The character's eyes both like hit the exact same point on the object to represent the depth, which means that on a side view, your character is always going to be slightly crossing their eyes. So their eyes are always going to be slightly off like this because they need to focus on a specific object, which means if they're looking as far out as they can, like in the distance, then their eyes will seem like they're just going straight because the object is so far that relative to how much your eye would tilt inwards is practically at the 0 scale. So the eye would practically just be in the center because he's looking as far out as he can right there. If you try to extend it more than that, then the character will just look like his eyes are wall-eyed. So if I extend it even just a tad bit more than that, then he's then almost wall-eyed. Like you can tell it's going in that direction. It's not quite there, but well, maybe it is a little bit there. So if I have a character and I don't want him to look goofy, then like I'm trying to say, don't be so concentrated on whether or not your character looks goofy for being cross-eyed. If you look at the Dragon Ball Z characters, a lot of the time both of their eyes are right here, but they can still give the impression that their character is looking forward without their character being too goofy, because their character needs to be focusing on an object. Like, you don't have to take this to a mathematical point of view like this. You have to like determine the distance of the object and just like draw a mathematical equation. You just have to keep this general thing in mind when you're drawing a couple of eyes. So I draw a couple of eyes. The shape isn't perfect, nothing like that. I draw a couple of eyebrows, something like that. And I have to remember that the eyes are going to be slightly inwards, and then I can draw the rest of the expression from there. It doesn't matter what shape you draw your eyes. It's just these little details that you keep in mind to control the overall look of the expression on the character. The shape and the accuracy of the objects is not the important part. The important part is the little details that cause it to be expressive. The rest of it is free expression. You can draw it how you want. You can draw it in the style that you want. It won't matter. You draw like whatever kind of shapes like this, even if it's like it's very stylized, square eyeballs if you want, you get that character's expression because you keep those different elements in mind when you draw the character. So there's that. Also, something I figured out, if you're trying to draw a crying character, like a character's like really sad in a situation, he's like, I'm so sad and it makes me want to cry, then one of the best ways to do that is not necessarily draw like tears like that, because that's going to look really bad most of the time. I mean, sometimes you can get that to look good, but it's hard. Is you just draw the edge like there's a puddle of water. So you pretend there's a puddle of water there on the bottom of the eyelid, and you draw the eye just kind of cutting off at that point. It causes the eye to look like it's filled up with water. It causes the character to look really teary, kind of. Especially if you add like kind of a wiggle to it like that. Again, it gives that like shapeless form that water is and applies it to the way your expression looks when you draw it. Helps you kind of draw a sad character. Some people, when they're drawing mouths, don't have to necessarily make the very tips of the mouth go up. So like, if I'm drawing a smiley face, I don't have to have the mouth be tipped. I don't have to have it be pointy on these edges like this. It can still express the general idea if the side of the mouth is still kind of doing this. You can still give the overall expression as long as you keep the idea in mind. So like, I've seen a lot of people draw faces like this that have like the teeth like tilting. That's really kind of cool looking, but it still like shows that the character looks happy and stuff like that. Oh yeah. Also, this character right here has reminded me of a new element. Thank you, character here, for your new elements. That's great. That's brilliant. That factor is the cheek right there. The cheek can cover this lower side of the mouth and the upper side of the eye. I mean, if you draw it in a ridiculous fashion, it can look absolutely ridiculous. But those little things can affect your character's expression tremendously. It's not really affecting this guy as far as I can tell. Well, a little bit. To show kind of the expression. So like on Sonic, Sonic's a really interesting character for his expression, so that's why I'm always focusing on him. Sonic, his mouth comes up and then it has a little cheek. He's got that little cute cheek right there. And his mouth like folds up underneath it and it still looks expressive. So his mouth goes up and then goes under the cheek. You've probably seen a lot of cartoon characters do that. And also the cheek can go the opposite direction. You have the eyeball like this. You can have the cheek start covering the eye from the bottom side, and it can give that kind of happy feel because you know what the mouth is doing almost. So if you were to cover the mouth, you could almost determine what the expression of the face is because you can see that where the mouth is actually pushing up the rest of the face. You can actually see this happen on regular people's faces a lot more than on cartoon characters, because cartoon characters don't have like that whole 3D form that you get like dynamic shading that tells you every different space on the character. I actually have something that will express that pretty well. Let me go to that in right now. This is a fun little program that I have. It's like just a very simple like drawing or 3D program to draw 3D shapes. So let me kind of get a basic shape form. Oh, that's the wrong way. He's like got these things sticking out on his face. Let me get kind of like a 3D form similar to a face, not perfect, but just enough to get me going. This is usually kind of the thing that happens is like you get to see the edges of an object once you actually perceive the edges of it. And then you would just draw the edges of the things that cut off, and every other line that you draw in there is either dynamic shading or it defines the edges of the 3D object you're trying to represent. So as you can see here, with most of the angles, you're not really seeing much of the shape of the cheek unless it goes to an extreme angle. So most of the time you wouldn't see the cheek at all, even though on a regular face you can see the cheek very dynamically because it's got all this shading like a regular painting. All these filters are really fun. You can get like this shiny one. What is this program called? It's called Sculptress Alpha 6. It was a free program. You can play around with it if you want. It's pretty fun. I've made some good faces on it. Like, I came in here and found the resources and started making my own filters on here, so that's why there's all these filters. And there's this one I made of the 3D face that I did, and it just kind of looks weird on the character. Like, if you look at the top, you can see the actual picture, but at the sides, it just kind of mixes together and makes it look like this silvery look. This alien guy is really creepy. So, yeah, there's that. So, thanks for watching. If you felt that was really helpful, add this video to your favorites, or perhaps if you really liked it, press the like button on this video, because that kind of stuff really helps me out and really helps the channel progress through life as if it is a young deer galloping up. What have I created? This is weird. Well, thanks for watching. Goodbye.